Okay, so just to like kind of introduce myself to y'all, let me start with a short story. Don't find it cringe or anything. But then my story is that in 2019, in my first year of A-levels, I did nearly a whole 13 months in the math stream, right? So then in 2020, I decided that I don't like where I'm going, especially I hated physics. So I changed streams. That is like in the middle. So I have already lost one. And then 2020, and in March, COVID hit. So then I was at home till like August without anything, right? And like in Jaffna, by that point, I think only like three people have done like literature properly, I would say. And like we were like the kind of the first batches that started and brought it out. So no resources anywhere. I had to go around asking people what to do. And then one day my mom came across this Facebook advertisement of ELSL, and she was like, okay, it's a blind pinata attack, but then let's just go with it because I'm basically doing nothing at home, right? So that's how I got into like ELSL classes. And then, so if you calculated, I think I only had like 1.5 years when I sat the exam in the art stream. So what I'm trying to tell you is that if you're working hard enough and if you're diligent enough, if you give your due diligence, you can like achieve things that people will tell you, don't be stupid, to imagine about it. Like that's the first thing everyone told me when I changed streams. They were like, "You're not even failing in physics. Why are you changing streams?" And I was like, "See, I don't like that path. I want to do what I want to do." So at that point, I had like no idea what I'm going to do. I was just like, "See, I like literature. I'm going to do literature, and then I'll figure out what happens next." So yeah, so then like 1.5 years in the art stream and I became island fourth. Yeah, and that another funny story attached to that is when I got the results first, it was actually like I became district second in island 52 because I had a B for literature. And people were like, "Oh, you got a B," because for them, like in especially in Jaffna, getting an S for literature was like a big thing. Like most of them like say that if you pass literature is a big thing because it's a lack of resources, like no one has ever taken the subject. So then I was like, no, I know that I wrote better than this, I know that I can get an A. So no one actually believed me. Half of them were scared that it's going to like decrease the marks again. And so like my dad was like, if you believe in yourself, let's just apply. So I applied, and then after recorrection, after I even got into uni, the results came out. And that's when I became like district first and island fourth. And like that was a whole like jump in the Jeep that score and everything. So that's my small story about myself. So what I'm trying to say is you can do whatever you want to do if you're giving your due diligence about it. Um, so when I asked Ravi sir what he wants me to tell y'all, he was like, just tell them how self-studying works, right? So um, I want to be brutally honest here. If you're not studying by yourself, you're gonna be lost, honestly, because like studying literature is like self accountability. If you are not ready to put in the effort, don't expect, like, obviously, you're going to pass because ELSL does that. But then, if you want to go beyond that S for even a C, even a B, an A, you have to have your own accountability of what you're doing, right? So, if you're not going to read, especially for literature, don't like, I don't know, the brutal way of saying it would be dream about more than an S, and that carries on into the rest of your academic career as well. It's not just for A-level literature, right? um yeah, so why this reading and studying by yourself is important. Like, I know a lot of y'all are going to be like, oh, but then we have the notes, we'll study and blah 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 blah. The thing is, your teachers, whether it be your school teachers, whether it be the classes that you go privately, and this is not just for literature, right? Um, Whatever the subject, whatever you do, all those teachers and all those classes are just like facilitators. And that's just like the main road, whether like, and they are just simply giving you the tools to walk on that road, right? If you want to run or like, let's say, take a vehicle and go on it, you have to put in your own effort for that. So like, that's like developing your craft, especially for literature, I'm speaking, developing your craft, increasing your jargon and diction, and then like developing your language. So you can't wait around to be spoon fed. Um, if you want to be spoon fed, you're gonna be like way behind in this rat race that is A levels. A levels are like the most competitive exam that you can sit as a Sri Lankan student. Like when you go to university, some people do fail, but then most of the time people who enter university are going to pass unless you're like really like doing your own stuff and not at all caring about it. That's another story. But then you won't sit a more competitive exam than Sri Lankan A levels unless you're going to do like, I don't know, some medical exam, entrance exams and all, which assuming y'all are not going to do because y'all are doing literature. Um, so for this particular rat race, that is the English A-level exam, you have to sharpen your own knives. Your competence is your knife, right? So, and honestly speaking, if I wrote the exam today or like now, I won't get an A. I might even get an S. I don't know if I'll get an S because like the knife is sharper when you like keep on like doing what it's needed, right? Now I am like more into law, so if you give me a law exam, I'm going to like do it better than that. But then a literature exam, I probably won't get the best results there is. So what are these like sharpening stuff that I'm talking about, you might wonder about. So you're only going to get the content from these classes. You won't be actually be trained to write the exam. Like, obviously, you're going to be trained for the exam, but then it's regarding knowledge, right? So, to write the exam, I like, honestly speaking, I think I wrote about 6 pages for my Othello question in the exam, I think, if I remember correctly, and then the rest were like five, five. So normally, a person who has never like attempted to train themselves will struggle to go beyond three, because even now when we write exams in university, we struggle to go beyond 3 pages. That because that has a lot to do with your timing and writing, right? So you have to sit down, time yourself, write those questions again and again and again. It's very mechanical, it's very annoying, but if you don't put in that effort, you're not going to reach that top, honestly. And then like there's other aspects to it. It's not just like repeatedly writing these, like, right? I think like, so like there are these other aspects of your language that you have to fine tune, like academic writing, like for example, Oxford Commerce. And then like a lot of people still like, even today, I have seen a lot of people like when you say good morning, madam, you have to put a comma after the good morning. Half the people don't know that because they don't train themselves to write like that, right? Because you're addressing someone. So those things you find on your own like training and your own like pursuit of trying to make your answer the best. That's like totally on you. But then like I'm not saying that what I did you have to do as well, because your methods work for you and it won't work for me. Not everything works for everyone. So what did I do? I personally, I immersed myself in the language, I would say. I was watching, like, if you're a Netflix, if you have a Netflix account, you can like simply go and watch all these, like, I wouldn't say watch the American ones, but then you can always watch the British series. And then you can, if you're more into writing, you can write your own stories, publish them somewhere. And then if you're into music, listen to music that has like proper lyrics. Um, like you have to put in the effort whatever you do. So like you might see that I'm speaking in a very like understandable English, right? My accent has totally changed. I think if you ask Sir, he would say that the English that I was using when I was a student and like immediately after like A levels was very different from what I'm using now. Because like my English has changed, even the speaking ones, because when I came to university, I was trying to adapt. And like I have picked up a lot of like me, Sanis, which is like more like very Sri Lankan compared to what I was talking when I was attending the classes. Uh, so then maybe like to end this topic, I could say that there's this Tamil proverb that my mom uses. I don't know if anyone here knows it. It's basically said, "குதிரையை கொண்டே குளத்துல விடலாம் அதுக்காக குடிக்க இயலாது." Which the direct translation is, you can drag a horse to the pond, but you can't drink for it. So that's it. Your parents, the classes, and everything, they are like just leaving you at the pond. If you want to drink it, you are the one who has to drink it. You have to bend down, drink the water, and like do whatever is needed, right? They can't drink for you. That's what that proverb is. And like I think that fits very well for everything regarding your academic career, I would say, but then specifically for literature. Yeah. So then another topic I wanted to touch on is how important, especially literature, like what we study is, right? Um, I personally feel like literature makes you this open-minded individual, right? Not to say that you accept everything, but then it makes you identify your own values. Like even like during discussions in classes or sessions, you would come across ideas that you don't necessarily agree with. But then you will understand where that logic is coming from. Because like in literature, I don't think there's a right and a wrong. And that applies even to law for us as well. So, but there has to be a logic. If you don't have that logic, that's going to like fall out. Your argument is not going to stand. So your own values and also accepting others' values. So like there might be very religious people, especially I remember all those Christian sarcastic poems. I don't remember like the actual poems or the actual content of it. It has been like 5 years, 4 years. I don't know. But then I remember the debates and the fights that went on in class because it's not even just like one sector of it, like not even just Christians, like sometimes Muslims and then even Hindus have fought over the content because the interpretation doesn't align with what they have grown up with or what they have grown to accept is their values. So what I'm saying is like literature makes you this person that is like, okay, you have your own values, but then you also accept that this person can have this idea because it stems from this logic. And you don't have to accept that, but then you have to learn to accept that that person has that opinion and that doesn't make that person wrong. There's this very fine distinction between respecting another person and respecting an opinion. Like you don't have to respect an opinion, but you have to respect a person, right? Um, then another fun aspect that I want you all to like kind of maybe find yourselves is like literature, after learning it, makes your life fun. So if, for example, if any one of you all are like Stranger Things fans, most of the people, um, as far as I've met and talked to, miss this whole storyline of child sexual assault with Will Byers. It's a whole metaphor right there. And most of the people don't understand it. They just see that it's like, nah, blah, blah, blah. But then that's a metaphor that they bring in for that theme, right? And like you kind of see things everywhere. Like the other day, I was watching an old episode of Ben 10 Alien Force. And then I was like, this transition scene comes in, when Ben is like changing into an alien. And that whole scene is basically body dysmorphia, right? And then like no one talks about it when you're a child. It's kind of like conditioning you in a way, but then I don't want to go about that. But then, like, yeah, you kind of think about things that other people might miss and are like they skip over. Um, and then this particular skill or this particular thinking, I would say, it makes life easier, I think, because it helps you think out of the box, right? So, and one particular truth that like I was told the other day by someone, a lecturer of us, is that this world is moving towards an IP economy. So that is basically saying that lawyers, lecturers, and people who work with their brains are getting higher salaries than those who are working with their bodies, right? Like, obviously, labor force is like undervalued compared to those who work with their brains. So, in this IP economy, studying literature makes life very easy because you tend to outshine others because you're trained to do that. I have seen that in like a lot of my friends who have done literature do better than people who have not done literature. And I wouldn't say that it's only for English literature, but then if you do literature in any language properly, that applies. It depends on how you're taught it and how you learn literature because yeah. And then you also kind of pursue your passions after doing literature, I would say. So um I necessarily don't read much these days, at least not as much as I used to. So like in A-levels, I remember I went through like 30 books in 2 weeks, like especially fiction. Now like I like buy books but I never go through them. But then I supplement that through other creative forms. Like I'm currently in a musical band, so I kind of go let my creative outlet go through that. So your creative outlet doesn't go, I would say. You find a way to find that creative outlet if you're a literature student, wherever you are in life. Um, and then that brings us to the third segment of what I have to say today. Um, so how does literature help, at least if you're studying properly literature in university? In university, the brutal, honest truth is, to quote Taylor Swift, you're on your own, kid, right? Lecturers and materials and everything would be there. But then if you wait around for those materials, you can pass, sure, you can pass, maybe, but you won't reach the top. So like university is basically like, I don't want to discourage you all, but then you have to work on your own to reach the top or like even like pass. Like they would come and talk about a subject and then just skip over stuff. You have to find your own materials, you have to read, you have to do your own research. It's basically like adapting to a system which is very different from the schooling system that you're used to. And if you're a literature student, it's kind of easier to adapt to that system, I would say, because um, at least the way that I studied and I was used to literature helps with my reading. And that, like, if the lecturer doesn't teach a particular area, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just read the materials that are given or like the recommended reading and like maybe like get a senior note and see where the area is. And like you are able to sustain yourself without a lot of panic involved, I would say, compared to people who are not used to the system. Because a lot of the people that I have seen who come from different subject combinations are half the time spoon fed, like not even spoon fed. That's like mashing a banana and putting it in your mouth and then wiping your mouth, kind of spoon feeding. That's what people are used to. And then you come to uni and you're like, what on earth is happening? I don't understand what is going on, because they don't wait around for you. Um, to adapt to the system. Some lecturers would like offer you like open office hours. They would like talk to you. Some lecturers would even baby the content down, but then most of them don't. You're expected to jump to that level, especially because they expect you, like y'all passed and got into university. And you know, like if you take the stats of the A-level students who enter university, it's like the top few, right? Maybe like it's different for other courses, at least for the literature. As a law student, what we get told is you're the cream of the cream, so you have to know what you're doing. So like you are like basically on your own. So you kind of adapt and evolve faster than other people do. Like I was able to catch up pretty fast in the first semester itself in the first year, whereas other people, I would say, kind of struggled, and there are people who have failed subjects third year into as well because they were struggling with how to study for a particular area. Yeah, so that's how literature helps in university. But then something that I want to add here is that if you're a literature student aiming to get a better grade, I'm not like I want to address here that I'm not speaking to people who want to simply get an S. I am addressing people who want to go beyond a C, a B, and even maybe reach an A. And if you're a person who wants to like get better results, you need to have self-confidence. But then self-confidence not in the way that Titanic was. Like Titanic went with way less rescue boats than they should have because they were too overconfident, right? But then the confidence of someone who goes to the gym diligently and knows that their body is being developed properly, or someone who's like diligently following a diet. If you have met those people, you would know that their self-confidence is something very different. And then that connects to also your due diligence of what you have to offer. If to be confident, you have to give your due diligence and do your hard work. You have to put in your effort, your time, because like something that Ravisa used to tell us in class is that if you're a literature student, you don't have time to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, which I would say is kind of true. And if you're carrying that on to your rest of your academic career, like some people might say it's like an unbalanced life, but then most of the time, if you're like so into achieving that high goal, you literally don't have the time. So that's how much you have to put in the diligence. I'm not saying y'all have to be single, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying that's something that is true that I agree with what sir has said in class. And then you have to have self-control. So you can watch all these media and you can do all these things, but you also have to have the control of knowing where to stop. Like if you're addicted and you're doom scrolling through TikTok and YouTube, you're not going to reach the level that you want to, right? And then you have to be passionate enough. That is like you have to be passionate enough that you want to have something. And that also translates into everything in life, I would say. If you like want something, you put in the effort and reach for it, whether it be a literature A, whether it be like getting a partner in life, whether it be getting the job that you want, or whether it be grabbing onto an internship that you want. If you I would say that's something that literature taught me. I was so focused on getting an A because people were telling me that I'm an idiot for choosing literature. And that kind of translated into things because after coming to university, I have just face on done things that people would consider like plain blank stupid. Like I have gone and just plain blank asked people to give me this opportunity. I have like applied to jobs that people would not apply to. I have like submitted CVs just because I really wanted to. And like that confidence and that passion gets you stuff half the time. Like it sounds idiotic, but if you're confident enough and you have your passion for that, it gets you the stuff you want. Yeah, that's all that I have to share. If y'all want to like ask anything, ask away, and like don't be scared to ask questions because like another thing that happened was in literature classes, I remember like it used to be like maybe what 10, 15 people on that Skype class. We used to have Skype. Now you all have Microsoft Teams. And on that class, it was basically like me and maybe another boy who was talking, and all the other people would be like silent. And half the time, my mom is like, "Are you on a personal class? You're always talking." And I'm like, "No, but I have questions that I want to ask." And then like sometimes it go. I remember like one of the revision classes went on till like 1:30 a.m. Something like that. It started at 8 and one went on till 1:30 a.m. My father was like, "What on earth are you doing till 1:30 a.m. in the morning?" So like you have to exercise your curiosity in a way that because you won't benefit much by others talking for you. You have to talk for yourself and ask the questions. Like sometimes your thought process would benefit others as well. Like I remember like there we went on for like a whole 15 minutes arguing something about Iago said in Othello. And that kind of still held on to that when I went to the final exam. And I remember I wrote that. I don't remember what it exactly is. So like those things, they help a lot, and those like transfer into like your life skills as well. Like if you do this properly, believe me, you're going to be like the top candidate that everyone wants in interviews, and interviews are not going to be very hard. Yeah, that's all that I have to share, my 2 pence.
Okay, thank you very much, Arti. Um, Now it's time to ask questions. Uh, if you have any doubts, I don't know how she did it. No, did you just say like I was before she came? I was talking about some things. Remember, like the passion and certain characteristics of a literature student, right? Did you just say in the way she talked that every quality that I mentioned in my PPT, you should have seen that it's there, right? So if you want to go to that level, that is exactly like that what you have to practice. Okay, so we'll talk about it later, but questions, because we have one more person to address you. Yes, you don't have to raise the hand. I just you can switch on the mic and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Kalavani Sasiharan from the 2026 class. And I remember at my first class asking about, do you know Arabi Arivalahan, a girl who got the island rank? And I was like, wow, I already knew you. So you are one of my, like idols. And of course, you are one of the dreams why I chose to choose literature for my subjects as well. So my question is like you told about self confidence and uh, at some time in some part of our life we feel down and sometimes we need motivation and how can you get that when you are like feeling like we can't do it like it's really hard like because everyone in our society feels like getting an A or rank in literature is like a mission impossible and along with it like arts is like generally considered as like the lower stream among other subjects as well so amidst all of this pressure how can we go on like
Yeah, so that's like a pretty like common experience for everyone who does that, right? So regarding the notion that everyone has about arts or the plain blank discrimination that they give us, the best option would be just to ignore them and just go forward with it. Like because it's your life and you're the one who's living it, and anyone who has an opinion about it is not going to live your life for you. And regarding the question of how you find self-confidence, that's kind of complicated, I would say. So like you don't start with the self-confidence that you know that you're going to get an A. But then I think the self-confidence that you can start with is that you know that you can put in the effort for it. Like um like you know that you can put in the effort, that it's you can reach a level that these people are like against. And then also another like personal thing that I would say is have a grudge that kind of like just fires you on. It can be like for me personally it was like some family drama and like relatives and all, like the normal drama. But then if you have this passionate grudge against someone that you want to prove them wrong, that is kind of like the best force there is. But then like there are different kinds of empowerment or like confidence boosters as well. Like maybe like I'm not saying that you have to idolize someone, but then you can like maybe choose a celebrity who's like always telling you positive stuff. Like that parasocial relationship sometimes works. I'm not like saying that it doesn't work or it does work, but for some people I have seen that it works. And then another way maybe is that So like I am the sort of person, if I know that I'm not going to achieve as much, I would just jump out. I have done that even in universities. Like in some, like we have these competitions which are called moots, which are kind of similar to debates, but they're more on the legal side of it. And I know that I won't be able to do it. So in the first moot I went in and then I just withdrew. But then you kind of identify your own pattern. I don't know if that's a psychotic thing that I have, but then some people you can identify your own patterns, right? Not only yours but others as well. But I would say like identify your own patterns, and if you see that you're kind of like stepping away from something because you don't want to face that particular emotion or that particular fear, then like identify that pattern and find ways to, I don't know, overcome it. I don't know if that answers your question, but those are like three ways that maybe you can look around that problem, that it's not just you, everyone has it. And that problem goes on for life. Like even in university, you have that problem. And it even applies to, I think, like personal matters in life.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions? I know you have questions and you are shy to ask them. uh,
I think there are a lot of like Tamil names
yeah,
this
yeah, there
time.
are a lot of people from Jaffna, like,
Yeah, like when
Um,
I was there, I think it was just me and Lucian. And then it was Sophia. Like there was like barely two people, right?
yes. And any questions? I know you have, but you are not going to get this chance again for the next 2 years, huh? Probably your A-levels will be over then. Um, and she'll be busy and you won't be able to contact and like ask it and end it.
Hello everyone, I'm Gracina, and Akka, can you tell us something about your self-studying method, like how many hours you study or at night or daytime, which is perfect for you, like?
All right. Okay. So that's a tricky question. Like I I wasn't a person who sat down and studied, right? I read stuff, but I didn't have like this. Okay, I'm sitting down, I'm studying today. Like it's more of like collecting stuff, I guess. Like I will just randomly find this research article. Oh, I forgot about research articles to mention. Okay, so when you're reading, reading has to include stuff that are beyond your syllabus or like the readings that you have to do. Like one of the major things is research articles. So like when I was doing A-levels, I didn't know anything beyond academia because that was the only thing that I came across. But then I came to university and I realized, okay, academia is like one of the basic things, or like research articles, symposiums, blah, 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 there is. So the thing about reading research articles is that that is one of the ways that you gain all of that I mentioned in a single sitting, right? You get your academic writing, you get your language development, you get your diction, you get your ideas, you get like different ideas, and you, in general, get to know stuff about something that you're studying. And half the time, these literature research articles are written by universities, like university professors, right? So they are not going to just mention about Othello. If you're reading about Othello, they are going to connect that to what Midnight Summer's Dream. They are going to connect that Tempest, maybe even Romeo Juliet. Like you don't have to read other stuff. Like you have to read stuff, yeah, but then you don't have to read through everything that an author has written to know that this connects to other stuff that he has written as well. Like that comparison, that knowledge helps you out to make you shine in your answer, because everyone is just going to simply compare what is in the syllabus. If you go beyond that extra step to read research articles, you are going to know, okay, this is what is mentioned in other works. So that's why you have to read research articles. Coming back to your question, um, I personally wouldn't say that you have to sit down and study for this many hours. That's kind of like, if it depends on the person again. So I have friends who can follow regiments like they're in the army, but then I have friends who can barely sit down. So you have to find your own method. So I have a friend in university who barely has time. He does like sports, every sport. He's the amalgamated president club, the president of the amalgamated club, blah blah blah, everything. And he barely has time to sleep. But then what he does is he'll get either, because we are good friends, either us to send him voice recordings, because when we are studying, we might do, that's also beneficial to us, or he asks his sister to read it on. And how he studies is he listens to that person read and talk about that particular subject while he's driving, because he lives like 30 minutes away from university. So like it depends on your study method and depends on how much time you have. So because I was a student who was affected by COVID, I had too much time on my hand. So I just went around reading everything that was available to me. Um, yeah, but then maybe like when you're near to A levels, like near to A levels is this period where you go crazy. Like my mother was actually scared of me, right? You go batshit crazy that everyone in your family is so concerned about you. So near A levels, what you can do is by like maybe like 1 month before you're done with everything, you have to know what that particular material is about. And then that's when you like start writing down quotes, start memorizing stuff, start I don't know, maybe like actually sitting down and writing whole papers, like a whole 3 hour paper. And like, yeah, so that's near the exam. But then if you're a person who has a lot of self-control and is used to this regimen of studying, then I guess like um however much time it takes for you to cover something, right? But then if you're a person who's more like me and who's more dynamic, it's more about absorbing everything that you read. I don't know if that answers your question or is very helpful, but then that's kind of the reality of it. But then if you're a person who needs a particular amount of set time, find your amount of time. That's what I said. Like what I study is and what you study like is very different. But then even now in university systems, I'm a crash courser. So sometimes I would just shut my phone down and like my mother would be worried because she's in Jaffna, I'm in Colombo. And then like I would be offline the whole day and I would just like cram the whole syllabus in like 24 hours. So it depends on me. Yeah, Shera, am I right? Or is it Shihera?
Yes, Aki, can you tell like how many essay type answers you wrote before you faced your A-level exam and how many full papers you did?
Okay. Um, uh, I really don't know, to be honest. Like, I know that the thing was when we sat for the exam, we only had like two past papers. Yeah, we had the 19 batch and the 20 batch. So I kind of timed myself into doing that. And then in school also, because well, in our school we didn't have the subjects, and that subject was like specifically put for me and my friend, so the teacher wasn't actually qualified, so she was facilitating us in ways that she could. So what we did with her was like we basically timed and wrote papers with her, even though she didn't mark them. So I honestly don't know. But then y- um you start writing papers for something as soon as you finish that, I would say. Um, like you don't finish one particular material like in one day, right? Like I remember like Othello went on for months for us. And like maybe you can start writing, what's the first part questions? I forgot what those are, like those extracts that you talk about. So like minimum you have to write like at least, how much time did you take for that? So 30 minutes
12
for,
minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes
For
for the
the
big
exam, you
one.
have 15, but you practice for 12 minutes.
12 minutes, yeah. So you practice for 12 minutes, and within 12 minutes, you have to write at least 2 pages. That actually you can start like very early on, as soon as you like finish, like y'all are like, if you're in the 26th batch, you would have been like finished with like at least a few poems, right? Or like a few proses. So then you can just like take an extract and start writing. It's more about honing your skill, and I would say the earlier you start, the better, because these are things that you should not put off to the last moment. These are like skills that you develop as soon as possible. And I'm saying that as soon as possible because I personally didn't know that I needed to write an answer in 12 minutes until like I guess 2020 December, I guess. I don't know, something like somewhere around there. So y'all are like, if you're in the 2026, oh, y'all are actually writing this year, right? So better start soon, like as soon as possible, ASAP. Um, but then write all the papers that are available to you, time and write all those that are available to you when then like I don't know, whenever you have the time, if that makes sense. I had a lot of time because I was a COVID student and I did that. But then you don't have to submit everything to be marked. I would say like I think I gave Sir about 3 answers, 4 answers, like each at like every turning point, and then you have to analyze, you have to see the change in your answers by yourself near the end. I could see the change. Yeah, and like I remember the very first answer that I gave to Sir, and my handwriting was terrible. Like it was terrible, and I remember getting scolded on the session, and I didn't have my headphone on. So my mom actually heard it, and she was like, "You're getting scolded like a kindergartner." And I actually like, so if you have perfect handwriting, you're lucky because I had to actually sit down and correct my handwriting as well. Yeah, so like if you're a 2026 person, start as ASAP. There's no numbers. The more that you write, the better you get. Yeah, Akshara.
Yeah, hi, I'm Akshaya Janardhanan, and so I'm also considering law as a possible path alongside my main interest. So, could you share whether the transition from literature to law was challenging, or like if it was, how you managed it?
Um, to be honest, academically, I didn't find it much hard. It's like, I don't know. It was pretty okay for me. I didn't find it hard. Because one, like when you do literature, you're very strong on your language. The reason that I had some stumbles was like our faculty changed our syllabus for us, and we are basically the lab rats for that syllabus. So they don't know what they're doing, and we don't know what we're doing. We have no past papers, blah blah blah. So that's the reason I stumbled. But otherwise, I didn't struggle much regarding the content itself, I would say. But then another aspect of university, unless you're like a Columbus student or you're someone who's posh and has the facilities and the economical status to be comfortable, you kind of get homesick, and then you also kind of are in the position where you have to like sometimes sacrifice and sometimes prioritize stuff. So um, it I don't know if that's relevant to this session, but then just maybe to add on to it, in the first 2.5 years, yeah, 2.5 years, I was in a hostel. So I had to like kind of sacrifice stuff, and that kind of like was kind of a struggle. But then that was not related to my academic career. That was related to the overall uni experience, I would say. But then I found a boarding, and now I'm there. So like even today, I have a concert, which is a faculty concert, but I didn't go for that because I'm here. I might go after this. Let's see. So yeah, I don't. It's a personal thing. But then some people, some friends of mine did struggle because law is more like I would say literature is very emotional. Law is not so emotional, I would say, and it depends on interests as well. Like I personally hate criminal law, So like, and then I love family law and constitutional law and administrative law. Those like very people consider those tough subjects, but then I found those more logical. So yeah, it depends on you, I would say. But then I would say as a literature student, you have the advantage because the amount of reading that you get for law is very similar and more than what you get for literature. Like you might get like a whole 300-page case to read in like 3 days sometimes. Yeah, so that happens. So literature kind of makes that easier, I would say.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Nishara, and
Yeah.
I'm a student who did English literature for my O-level exam also. But during that time, the way I'm studied that most of my friends, they made short notes and went through those, but I didn't do any of those things. I just went through the note. I always read the notes and such like things. So, but my teacher always said to me that reading is the best remedy for English literature for O level. But she also told me that for my A level exam, if I'm doing English literature, I need more dedication, and I I should actually study very hard for that. So as a student who faced very successfully for your A level exam, can you advise me how to like in the case of learning English literature for A level, did you make short notes, or like did you went through the notes always, or did you read those? Like how did you study during that time?
Mm, okay. First off, I would say O-level literature is very different from A-level literature. At least I personally feel like because I got a C for O-level literature even after like recorrection. That didn't change. So like I had 8 days and all my friends had 9 days, and that was a very big problem for me. But then like literature, like short notes. I don't know if I had short notes, but then I don't have my books with me. But then I don't know how y'all are taking notes right now. What we used to do is we had this printed Othello, and then on the sides there would be like so many like tiny words, and then like there would be multiple colors over the same word of highlighters. And that's a habit that I still continue, to be honest. Like my mother's friends, if they come up from abroad, they ask me, what do you want? And I say, like, if you all have like very nice pastel colors, highlighters, please send them. And everyone looks at me like weirdly because I ask for like weird like stationery stuff. Yeah, so like short notes per se, I don't think I had short notes. But then I did have these notes which were like very visual, if you get what I'm saying. Like you see the word and you remember the whole discussion that happened about it, because the discussions were like very uh I don't know. It was basically a whole hell debate about one particular single word sometimes. So yeah, I had like notes, and then sometimes I have this habit of doodling over stuff. So my notes were sometimes filled with like relevant doodles. Like I remember there's this one poem. I think it's designed with a moth and all. Am I right? Okay, so that my notes were like filled with words, and in the background there was like doodles. So like it was more of a visual code. I didn't rewrite stuff. But then what I did was I had this very thick I would say like booklet that I made, which was basically filled with quotes. So I remember I don't remember the number actually. I think I memorized around 300 quotes from Othello. Yeah, and those
360.
yeah, 360 quotes. Yeah. So those were all in that booklet. And so it's like you write on all these foolscap sheets, and then you like kind of make them into this booklet. And then like there it's and those are also color coded according to theme. Like there's like if it's red, it's related to Iago, blah blah blah. And that's like a very funny thing because the day before I think the day, 2 days before the exam, I had misplaced it at home. And I had already like memorized everything, but then I needed that booklet. And then I remember I was like crying, like full on crying, and my parents, my sister, all were like, "What on earth is happening?" See, my mother was so scared of me before the exam. And then they found it, it was on my bed because I have been sleeping with it. Right. So like I had these booklets full of quotes, so that was like for Othello, it was around like if it's 360 quotes, like I don't know, 25 pages. You make those like handmade. It's not like printed out or anything. You have to write those and color code those. And that's the short notes you can have because I don't know. Everything else is visual, I would say. I didn't have short notes particularly, but then my notes are very visual and it's like very, very, very small letters written there. And sometimes you don't have space on the paper. So what you do is you paste another sticky note on it and then like you write above it and then you paste another sticky note on it and you write above it. And some of my books are like they couldn't close properly because there was so much notes in it. And one of my friends took it from me for her second shy and I didn't get it back. I'm still very sorry about it because I loved seeing that book. I think, yeah, that and Othello and Tess, those were like my most treasured notes. Yeah, and another thing is I read Tess about 5 times, the whole thing. Even like Sir was like, how did you read through it, right? So like, yeah, you have to like repeatedly read your stuff, like until the point where you like wake up from your dream and you like know stuff.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm Akshika Shivakumar.
Yeah.
Uh, what are the challenges you faced when you do, especially English in your A levels, and how did you overcome it?
Um, English, well, as I said, like you have a lack. If you're from the northern province or like if you're outside of the western province, that is Colombo, Gambahar, you don't have the resources. So, resources not just like the reading materials. You don't know what to do. Like you don't have the facilitators for that. And so that was kind of like the major challenges that I had. Um, yeah, but then yeah, like okay, another major challenge was like learning to adapt to Shakespearean language. Like that was pretty hard in the beginning because I still remember that in the first scene, I guess, like something about Iago saying about Desdemona and Othello something. So those like imageries, like in the first reading, you don't understand. Like, and if you're someone who's not so exposed or like very protected, you don't get the innuendos that Shakespeare has. Like Shakespeare is like a pain to understand on your own. So like you need like the proper resources. And I would say that also applies to a lot of old texts, like things that are after the 90s. You can, if you have an okay understanding of literature, you can manage. But then like things that I struggle to understand by myself, Othello, um, Tess, and then those first few poems that were about I don't remember what they were about. All those like stuff. Like you don't understand them because well obviously they are not in a language that you use. Not just simply Sri Lankan English, not even like the current colloquial British English, right? Those are like very old and they are like written in this very sarcastic, very subtle manner that you don't understand. So you kind of have to get used to that language, I would say. Um, yeah, that was kind of like a challenge. Um, yeah, those are the challenge that I had that I didn't already mention. Hmm.
Good evening. I'm Rizka Kichil. Since you mentioned about writing codes and memorizing them, I am I find it hard to choose which part to memorize and which part to leave. To be honest, during my O levels, those in those prose sections like the Nightingale and all, I memorized the whole thing because I don't know which to choose as a part to write as a quote because I memorized the whole prose. So I find it hard to find quotations to write on the paper. And how do you manage? How do you find perfect ones? How do you note them? And since I'm in Colombo, you mentioned you have a lot of that people in Colombo have a lot of facilities in Colombo to learn more about literature, but I don't know what are you talking about. Like even I don't know what to go through and all. So can you help me with that?
Okay. Well, the thing is like not to um based on refute what you said. Maybe like you're just not looking enough. If you're in Colombo, I would say, um, like I would say Colombo is the hub of resources, right? Sorry about that. Colombo is like the hub of resources for everything. Like if like someone knows something about something, like I would say like if you're in the Western province, you're kind of like the competition is high, but then I would say like if you don't know about it, you're just not looking hard enough. Like I'm sorry if that's very rude sounding, but that's like the honest truth that I can like give you. And regarding the quotes, so you kind of get an understanding of which is necessary when you learn it, right? So like it's kind of like so you don't have to memorize everything, but then the thing is like when you memorize like 360 quotes from Othello, it's kind of like at this point where you know the play word by word. So again, you're not going to do this like 2 years before, right? You're going to do it like very near the exam. So like for poems, you just memorize the whole poem, unless like it's a poem that very rarely shows up, right? I remember that Elephant Lion poem by Richard de Soisa. I didn't memorize that particularly because one, that was too controversial to write. And like those things you kind of decide and go. You don't want to write something too controversial, so you're not going to memorize that. But then you kind of always stick to the safe ones like the romantic poems, if I'm right, and then like the older ones because those are like very easy to critique and write. So those are like what a sonnet is just 14 lines. Am I right? A sonnet is 14 lines, right? Yeah. Okay. So it's just 14 lines, right? Like if you're like a music lover, you know your favorite song by heart and your favorite song is like 3 minutes long. If it's 3 minutes long, that's going to be like, I don't know, 30 some lines at the least. And a 14 line sonnet, if you put it in a song, it won't even come up to 1 minute, right? So those are like comparatively, they are very short. And then you come to a point where you're so familiar with the materials that you don't need to uh, particularly memorize it, I would say. It's also like something to do with the language that you get used to. I remember that I didn't memorize what's her name, Iago's wife's. I forgot her name.
Emilia.
So Emilia's quotes, you don't actually like memorize per se, but then because you're so exposed to the play, when you're writing the answer, you kind of just remember, okay, she said that, and you're so like used to the play that you kind of just write it and it ends up right. Um, so for picking the quotes, I would say like it depends on how much you focus on the class itself. Like some quotes, like you would be so bored that sir is like repeating on it again and again and again. Like you would be so mad about it. But then those would be like very important ones. Those ones about like Othello talks about Desdemona and those like in the first few scenes where Iago is introduced and all like those things like at some point you don't actually need to memorize them, you already know them, so you kind of like memorize them as per theme, I would say. Yeah, so poems you don't pick and choose, you memorize the whole thing. Prose, most of the time, it's all the quotes like what's the name of that Sri Lankan prose? Um,
Action and
Action and
reaction.
reaction. Yeah, so those the quotes like the dialogues you remember. And then like there are some like quirky lines that you come across that would obviously be like that scene where she kind of saves that ant or something, like those like descriptive things you're just kind of like forced to like pick them. Like you go through it, you understand it, and you be like, okay, so this is particularly important. Then yeah, like it's kind of intuitive in a way, but then it's also like when you're like so used to the material, you know that this line is important. I don't know how to explain it. It's like asking me to explain that 1 + 1 is 2. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if the answer is very useful for you.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How did you practice for your language paper, especially the first question?
I actually forgot what the first question is. What is the first question?
Essay.
Okay. So funny story about that. So I decided that I'm going to write a story. I think like 4 months before the exam. And then so I was like, I used to write. I don't write anymore. I have kind of like stopped it. Like my creative outlet is like kind of null at this point. So I used to write, and then so it's like, if you're a writer, go for writing it. So I was like, okay, I'll like write stuff. And like I like how I practiced is like, apart from actual stories, I was actually a fan fiction writer. So like you pick your fandom and you write your fan fiction, or you like read your fan fiction, whatever. And then so I was like, you have to practice your story. And then he was like, you have to write a horror story. And I was like, what on earth is he talking about, practicing your story before you go to the like exam, because you don't know what the actual story is going to be, right? But then I actually did. And I actually wrote it. So the trick is you pick what you're good at. So I was a story writer. I wrote a story, right? Um, if you're a person who watches a lot of movies, um, if you're like always stuck to Netflix and all, I would say pick the movie review. But then I think the movie review alternates with the book review. Am I right? Or is it just a movie review?
Movie review.
Yeah, okay. So if it's a movie review, then like I would say like pick these indie movies that no one talks about, I guess. Like instead of like this, like you can't go and like talk about Avengers Endgame, right? You have to talk about something that has substance. Like, I don't know, Call Me by Your Name might be like somewhat okay to critique about. Like those like indie art based films, you have to pick and choose. But then I would say movie review, unless you're like a person who's posting reviews on Letterboxd all the time, it's going to be pretty tough, because as a Sri Lankan, we are not very used to watching those kind of films, I would say. Right? And maybe I'm wrong, but then in my experience and my friends who have shared experiences with me, we don't watch those art films that people barely talk about. And then I don't remember what the other things were. There's this essay option, right? Like kind of like a scientific essay. So if you're if you're not a very strong story writer nor a movie person, go for the essay, because that's kind of like the part that you can kind of prepare for, I guess, because you can kind of guess. I remember, like, before I pick the story, what you have to do is you have to go through all the newspapers, like at least the headlines of the newspapers of what is being talked about. So, like, when we were doing it, I think it was the Express Paper, something related to the environment. So, like, you go through it, you collect your evidence. So that's kind of, I don't know if it's a safe option, but then it's kind of like a predictable option comparatively, because you can predict based on what's happening in the country. What is, I don't know what the other options are. So it depends on you basically. So I myself, I chose the story. I pre-planned the horror story that I'm going to write. I practiced it again and again and again. And I still sometimes wonder how I wrote that twisted, gory story. It was a story that was a horror story, but then it was happening in a wedding aisle, and then the ghost or like the zombie says "I do" instead of the actual bride. So yeah, that was the like you come up with your own version of the story. Like I remember sir telling us about this clown that chop the head off from a previous batch, I guess. So like if you're a person who's going to write a story, make sure you have a horror story, prepare it, and then what you do is you tailor it to what is in the paper. Most of the time you can tailor it. I did tailor it. Mine was like something related to friends betraying each other, something, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember exactly what I wrote. But anyway, yeah, so I personally believe that the reason I got an A after the recollection is that story. I personally believe that's my personal belief because I don't know. That was like my ultimate scoring thing, I guess. Yeah, so it depends on you, the first question, honestly. But then, yeah, I don't know. It depends on you. I'm sorry if that's not very useful of an answer.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, right? You can go to that event, I think now, right? Is it over now?
Um, I
Too
think
late?
so, sir. I think
Oh
so.
my
One of
God.
my friends called me, so it's okay.
Okay. Um, so then in that case, we will release you from all these questions. RC, thank you very
Yeah.
much for like giving them an idea about like inspiration is very scarce, like it's a scarcity these days, and you don't get to say like, have you ever seen? I'm asking you all, have you ever seen in your, you know, environment somebody who reads like 30 books in 2 weeks? Right?
Used to, not now.
Yeah, yeah. And so like uh, that is who you have to become. Like, you have to read a lot. Remember my first slide that I explained earlier, and the culture that you have to practice. And so put that to a person, and you have her in front of you. And so, yeah, thank you very much, RC, for like inspiring these kids. You can go to event now. Okay.
Okay. Okay. And all the best, guys. I hope y'all prepare yourselves properly and face the exam